Hey everybody, it's officially spring, and it's a beautiful day to share some hardy citrus news with you guys. So as you know, we've been grafting a lot of hardy citrus, and a lot might even be an understatement. We are working on so many new varieties, lots of seedlings like these that we're grafting onto more mature rootstock to expedite their growth and get them outside in the trial rows, as well as already known varieties that we're also growing onto rootstock that we have and also getting those into the test rows. So we have seedling varieties and known varieties and, well, quite a lot of both. This isn't even everything too. I have a ton of stuff that's going out. But what I wanted to show you in particular was a few interesting seedlings that we've grafted here, and particularly Ichang Lemon number 1 and number 2, which I'm now more confident in saying that these truly are probably, I say probably, but I'm fairly certain that these are Ichang Lemon hybrids with some sort of other Trifolia orange hybrid. So maybe it's a Citrandarin or a Citramello. Citramello seems likely since, well, the foliage isn't too different, and Citramello is probably more related to the Ichang Lemon than a Citrandarin, just given the common parentage with the pomelo background, grapefruit, things like that. But it's interesting with these because we're finally seeing some consistent differences. And I've been able to study some of the Ichang Lemon seedlings that are germinating, as well as looking at past ones that we've had and comparing them to these two, as well as using our Ichang Lemon tree inside here as a reference. Because as you can see, this tree, it's a true Ichang Lemon. It actually looks quite different from our seedling, so just take note here. Those big broad leaves, it's actually slightly pubescent on the stem too, and kind of like a lighter green color, but it's a very attractive plant. And in fact, when more matured, these can actually have big, dark, kind of glossy leaves. Virginia Fruit Grower has one, and his is absolutely beautiful. Our outdoor specimen died, actually, and I think that was just because, well, one, we had a particularly cold winter, but two, it was a first-year tree, unprotected, in an open field with full wind and sun exposure. So it did worse than 10 Degree Tangerine and Yuzu, which both proved hardy outdoors here as smaller plants. So when they're more established, I think we'll see even less damage. Ichang Lemon, though, I think can be hardy here if it's in a sheltered location, and if you provide it protection in those early years and allow it to grow bigger before you just throw it outdoors like I did. But again, kind of our testing, I'm putting younger trees out there to really determine their hardiness. I want them to be hardier than our zone even, and then those are the ones that I'm really going to capitalize on, and I think we'll do better in a wider range of zones, because if they're marginal here, they're going to be kind of limited on how many other areas you can plant them, because we are still in a fairly mild climate. The southeast does have relatively short freezes and a pretty long and warm growing season, quite hot actually in the peak of summer, so it's pretty different, and I want to develop and test varieties that would do well in more than just our climate. So keep in mind what that Ichang Lemon looked like. Now come back to these seedlings here. This is number 1, which has been our more vigorous seedling, and it also has purplish new growth, and it's actually pretty dark in color, especially compared to number 2, its sibling here, which has lighter colored leaves and a little bit less vigorous growth, but honestly not too different now seeing them side by side grafted. The difference is subtle, and I did have to kind of prune these. I'm kind of training these in that main leader style so we could follow that kind of rapid evaluation system and get these growing fast. So the thing is, these, as you may know from a past video, originated from Stan McKenzie. These were seedlings that he grew out from some unknown Ichang Lemon fruit that was clearly open pollinated. So it cross-pollinated with some other citrus, or again, Trifolia hybrid more specifically. I don't know which one it was. We can only really speculate. I'm not even sure how much genetic testing would really help us. But they're pretty cool nonetheless because both of these plants as seedlings displayed monofoliate leaves, as you would expect, but also bifoliate leaves and trifoliate leaves. However, number 1 is more inclined towards developing bifoliate and especially trifoliate leaves, where I've only noticed 1 or 2 trifoliate leaves on number 2, whereas the rest of the leaves tend to be actually strongly unifoliate, but it will have some, on occasion, bifoliate leaves. But it's pretty cool because even as these grafts grow, which kind of similar to Carolina lime, when I've grafted Carolina lime, which is another 25% trifoliate hybrid, which is why I kind of think it's similar to this, Carolina lime is unifoliate. And in fact, it kind of has kind of similar ripples in the leaves and everything when they're younger. Maybe I could even take a picture and show you guys what I mean here with the Carolina lime seedling. There's some similarities, and putting this information together, it does lead me to believe that this could be a 25% hybrid, and there's actually a lot of good 25% hybrids out there. Carolina lime and Thomasville citrange quat are just a couple examples. But now here's the cool thing. So far these grafts, we weren't seeing any mixed foliage, especially on number 2. This is just a purely monofoliate specimen so far. When we do get bigger bifoliate leaves, I'll be able to show you guys, but if you check on our website anyway, I do have profiles for the new varieties of citrus that we're breeding and selecting, so you'll be able to see the different leaf structures that we've been able to notice in these seedling trees. So that's number 2 there. You could just tell it seems like a little bit thornier, more monofoliate, lighter in color, slightly less vigorous. And then number 1, perhaps maybe it got a little more trifoliate in it, I'm not sure, but a little more vigorous, perhaps slightly less thorny, though it could be comparable, but darker in color. The leaves tend to be a bit more abnormal too, whereas these leaves are a lot more uniform and generally more attractive. This one can have leaves that, I don't know if you can pick that up. I've seen it more on the original seedling too, but they tend to vary a bit more and they're not always perfectly symmetrical. But here's the cool thing. I mentioned how I've noticed a lot more bifoliate and trifoliate leaves on this one. And as we get towards the top there, you guys see it? There's a bifoliate leaf right there. So pretty distinct there. And this is something, again, that's been reoccurring. And you can see the new growth isn't showing it too much. It has the slightest purplish tinge, but I think especially when growing in cooler weather, we notice that a bit more, which does tend to happen with a lot of different plants actually. It's some sort of stress response, but it does have a little more purplish color in it, which is pretty interesting. I don't know what to make of that exactly, because I'm pretty sure a lot of these yuzu hybrids and Ichang pepita hybrids and things along those lines can have purple foliage on their own, so that may just be randomly expressing here. But these are some pretty cool looking seedlings here, and I'm really excited with the head start we got on them because we grafted them in the winter time. We're going to get a really good head start on a lot of these varieties, whereas some of our other ones like Citralden, and we have some very interesting Citramello and Citrandarin hybrids, those we will be grafting out soon because they're not quite big enough, whereas these we got as larger seedlings in the fall from Stan McKenzie, so that was really cool. So that's our Ichang Lemon update. These are our test plants that are going out into the rows, and we are going to make backups too, just in case one of them is almost hardy, but ideally we will have plants that make it through this following winter, and then we'll propagate off of them once they prove themselves. So I'm not trying to make too many copies, even if I really like the odds of a particular cross, because I don't want to get too attached. I want to see if these trees can make it through the winter, and then we can get a little more excited about them. Perhaps we'll have the next Triclemuse number 1, which has proven itself very, very well this past season and shows a lot of promise. Now we have another potential Pepita trifoliate hybrid, which is really, really cool. And this is what I wanted to capitalize on anyway with my own breeding. I've been saving trifoliate and yuzu pollen, things like that, so I'm going to try and make my own crosses too, but being able to select from these seedlings is just as important. And especially with all the seedlings we're going to be growing, I'm really keeping my eyes peeled for off-types. So even if I'm not directly breeding them, I will go through the effort of selecting them and raising them through this more efficient system to get them to a fruiting age and test their hardiness at the same time. So that's those guys. Just a couple others I ought to mention just because I have them here. One of them is our Precocious yuzu, which I made a forum post about this, but I did have a yuzu last year that flowered at a pretty good height, which I can show you a picture of that one too. It actually had what seemed to be mostly complete flowers. I'm not entirely sure, but generally these are male or female sterile when they're precocious like that, and generally the flowers don't reoccur after the first time. However, we're going to see with this graft what happens. The seedling itself seemed fairly hardy, and it was exposed to some cooler temperatures, the tender growth specifically, and it didn't die where some of the other yuzu seedlings that we had actually did die back a bit because they were growing when it was still too cold. So it shows some promise, and interestingly, it has very narrow foliage. It seems a little less vigorous than some of our other seedlings, but it's just a skinnier plant with skinnier foliage, which is distinct from the yuzu that we grow, the different types that we have in the seedlings as well. So this will be a fun one, purely experimental. We'll see if it's hardy outside, and we'll see if it's still precocious. Either way, it's cool to have some sort of off type of yuzu, and we are keeping our eyes peeled for more. This is another interesting one where I don't know if it's extra chromosomes or what, but this is a Taiwanica lemon seedling. And again, let me show you. This is our Taiwanica lemon, which you can actually see is beginning to flower. I actually heard that these weren't exactly precocious and they take their time with flowering and fruiting, but this one has proven to be exactly the opposite. But take note of the growth of the foliage. And now, look at this one. That is very different. Those leaves are much broader and shinier. And actually, I mean, this tends to be the case with a lot of Taiwanica seedlings, but it almost seemed more pubescent on the stem, the portion that I grafted from the seedling. And it seems like a little less firm, perhaps. I don't know if that was just the growing conditions, but the stem seemed a little bit softer, a little fuzzier, and then the growth itself is very broad. It's an interesting looking strain of Taiwanica lemon nonetheless, so I'm going to test it. And we'll see if it's hardy, and then from there we'll see if there's any differences. But in the off chance it does have extra chromosomes or something like that, that can improve its odds of surviving outdoors here. There is evidence pointing towards those tetraploids and things like that being more cold resistant. And from what we saw outside with the Tri4N, our tetraploid Taiwanica lemon and Trifolia orange hybrid, it was extremely hardy, and it actually appeared perhaps even slightly hardier than the Tri that we grew. But that also could have been the case because the tetraploid version grew a lot thicker and actually more vigorously, which I don't think is always the case. But it grew very thick, had very thick broad leaves, things like that, and that thickness may have also given it an edge because a stem like this versus a stem like this, well, obviously this one's going to fare better in the winter. So I think it was one of those types of situations. But very cool, we got those two going on, and I finally noticed some progress on our Iva Swingle grafts. These have taken a long time, whereas our dingle was already sprouting here, but I have so much that I'm gonna have to update you guys on slowly because we're loaded with work to do right now. And I have a lot of grafts, a lot of hybridization, and a lot of seedlings to take care of. So I'm going to get back to work. I hope you guys enjoyed that little update. Really cool to see with these seedlings and see how far the grafts are coming along already. I really hope that these get to a really good height this season. And I'm excited to see how the seedlings that we already have outside, I'm excited to see how large those grow. We already got some that were really close to my height. I know Triclemus got really tall, so maybe we can double that this year. But we'll see. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.